Well, everybody, welcome. It's Doc G and Mike Dupree, and actually, we're doing the Jimmy Deal Celebrity Spotlight Show today. Jimmy had to go to work, and Jimmy gave us the chance to be co-host today for this great show, this special show, where our guest is going to be Joe Bosnall from Oak Ridge Boys. And I'm going to have Mike Dupree do an introduction, and then we'll start the show.
All right, where to start on this one? Oh my goodness, I got to say, Joe, thanks for joining us for one thing, but one of the longest running gospel, pop, country groups of all time, the Oak Ridge Boys, which dated back originally in 1947, I believe, and then many members throughout the years, but the most memorable, or one of the members are here today, Joe Bosnall. And I'll tell you what, the biggest song I can ever remember, and I don't want to say from my childhood because I was a teen at the time, Elvira. Such great hits, and so many others, Bobby Sue, and just numerous others. Plus, here's one for you guys from the 80s that I remember, and I mean, I absolutely loved the Oak Ridge Boys. And then when you were on the Dukes of Hazzard, that just cemented my love for the group even more, because it was my favorite TV show back then, and then also being on the Dukes of Hazzard. That had to be so exciting, and you guys have had such a career. Hundreds of awards from country music television, being inducted to the Country Hall of Fame, and members of the Grand Ole Opry, and the people that you have been with. It's just amazing. I want to first of all welcome you, Joe. It's great to have you on. Your gospel and Southern rockabilly legend in my mind, and most everybody else's. Welcome to the Jimmy Deal Show. And sorry Jimmy couldn't be here, but it's so great to have you on, Joe. It's just amazing. I wish my mother was here today. She absolutely loved the Oak Ridge Boys, and especially you. She loved you as the lead singer of Elvira. And thanks for coming on. And if you would, I know you've got a lot of stuff past and present, and we'll get into your book writing, because I know you've written several books, and also a very touching sentiment about your mom and dad, which we'll also get into. But why don't you tell us what you're doing currently, because you're still performing and still recording, and it's one of the longest running groups in country history.
Well, Doc, Mike, thank you for having me on today, man. That's I thought that introduction was going to just go and go and go, and there is a lot of stuff.
It would have been, but I've been getting kicked here.
There's a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. I'll tell you, just one quick correction. The original Oak Ridge Quartet began around 1944.
Oh, 44.
And what brought it on back then, they were, and this is a great story, really, they were a bluegrass gospel group called the Georgia Clodhoppers. And they worked out of Knoxville. And the Manhattan Project was being worked on in Oak Ridge in the secret installation. There were thousands and thousands. And, the atomic bomb would end World War II. And there were thousands of scientists and military personnel and their families sequestered there at this installation. And they allowed the Clodhoppers to come in on Saturday night and entertain. So they eventually became known as the Oak Ridge Quartet. And when the war ended, a guy named Wally Fowler took the Oak Ridge Quartet to Nashville. And they sang together for about 6, 7, 8 years. And as those guys got older and left and younger guys came on the scene, they changed the name to the Oak Ridge Boys to avoid confusion. Now, had they not changed their name to the Oak Ridge Boys back in the 50s, I guess we'd be the Clodhoppers. But it is a very unique history. And William Lee Golden joined this group, the guy with the beard, in 65, Dwayne in 66. And as we're talking today, it's Dwayne Allen's birthday, so happy birthday, Dwayne. And
happy birthday, Dwayne.
Yeah, Richard Sturban, the bass singer, joined in 72, and I joined in 73. So we've been together a long time, and you're right, man. There's been a lot of songs under a lot of bridges and a lot of good stuff. You mentioned Dukes of Hazzard. We actually did that twice back in 79 and 80. And it was the same exact storyline for both shows. We were speeding through town, and we got a ticket, and we had to go pay it off by singing at the Boar's Nest. Well, we did that once, and then they invited us back to do another show, which was really fun because Daisy Duke was there.
Yeah. Well, if I remember correctly, she actually put her arm around you in the one shot when Sorrel Brook, Boss Hogg, was ripping up the ticket and said, we're taking care of it. But the Daisy Duke part, I was in love with Catherine Bach, and then to see her put her arm around you, I was thinking, he is the luckiest guy in the world.
I was the envy of every guy in America. And in fact, you can go to YouTube now and look up Oak Ridge Boys Dukes of Hazzard, and you'll see that scene of her putting her arm and my arm around her. It was like, whoa, that's Daisy Duke by God. I knew I had arrived then, man. That was cool.
Oh, that's one of my fondest memories when I was younger. That was a great show. And to be around all those actors, most of them have passed away, of course. It's a shame. James Best, Sorrel Brook, Denver Pyle, who is another legend in the TV and movie industry, to be able to perform with them, that had to be a dream of a lifetime for you guys. And
well, it was because, and us and John Snyder and Tom Wopat have remained friends all these years. But I got to tell you, man, those old actors you just talked about, when I was a kid, they were in every Western that was out.
Yeah.
And
Andy Griffith's show.
Character actors, man, they were there. So, yeah, I got a real kick out of doing Dukes of Hazzard. That was a fun time for us. In fact, those whole late 70s, when everything started kicking into gear for the Oak Ridge Boys, we had our first big hit in 77. We had 5 gold albums by the time 1981 got here. And when 81 got here and Elvira happened, holy cow, the whole nation was singing Papa Mau Mau with the Oak Ridge Boys. They still are.
It's still one of my all-time favorites.
Me too.
It's phenomenal. Why don't you tell us about Richard? I know that you grew up, of course, in Philly, and then Richard was in Camden, not far from RCA, which is one of my favorite companies. But tell us how you met Richard, and then the singing teacher that you guys had that was the same that he turned you on to.
Well, I was like 15 years old. Richard was 19. I just thought the Southern Gospel quartets were the end of the world. I mean, I was a Philadelphia street hoodlum. I needed something good in my life, and God provided it, and he did it through music. And my whole life changed when I started hearing some of these big Southern Gospel quartets. And I went up there, and there was this group called the Keystone Quartet. I went to a concert, and this young bass singer, Richard Sturban, was up there singing, and he was great, man. And I found out that he worked at Gimbel's in Northeast Philly, selling men's clothes. So I went from my house up there. I took the L and 2 buses to get to Gimbel's in Northeast. The L is the elevated train, by the way. That's Philly talk. And I found Richard selling clothes. I introduced myself to him. We became friends. I bought a few shirts off of him. And the rest is kind of history, actually. I had a little group called the Faith 4 Quartet there while he was singing with the Keystones. And he eventually, to make a story short, we did have the same voice teacher. Her name was Aunt Betty. He turned me on to her. And so me and him would go together to see Aunt Betty and do vocal exercises, which I've never done since. But, I've never done those since.
And what strikes me as funny, I had heard that you actually worked for, was it Jack Frost Sugar?
Yeah.
That's which was a big industry for people back in the day that lived in that area. That's amazing.
I did. Well, I was working at Jack Frost Sugar when Richard called me one day. I was about 19 then. And he called me and said, the Keystones are going to try to go full time. You want to come sing with us? So I left Jack Frost Sugar, joined Richard, and we sang in the Keystone Quartet. Let's say we sang it starved for about 6 years. And then Richard eventually, with 3 boys and a lot of bills to pay and not making ends meet, got a job offer from J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet, and he took it. What I did then, I couldn't find a bass singer, so I just hired a bunch of musicians, and I turned us into an Oak Ridge Boys. The Keystones turned into a little farm team, like for the Oak Ridge Boys. Richard went with the Stamps, sang with Elvis, joined the Oaks in 72. I came to the Oak Ridge Boys a year later, and all that's history too. But I'm about to turn 74, and Richard just turned 79, baby, and we're still singing.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
That is. Well, you guys certainly have stood the test of time. And it's just as popular today as it ever was. And I know you guys are still touring now after COVID and everything. You're just as popular as ever from everything I can read and find out. I've always been a fan, obviously, and the recordings that you guys did from the very start. I think that's what really everybody remembers mostly is you four guys. Before that, I couldn't tell you any of the members other than Wally.
We pretty much are the group that everybody knows as the Oak Ridge Boys, the hit-making group, the Hall of Fame group, blah, 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 and all that. I mean, it's us four. We're a team. We're brothers. We've been doing this a long time. We're family. Like I said, Dwayne's having a birthday today, which is really cool. And I have a birthday next month. Richard had a birthday last week. So we're still surviving, man. We're still doing it. We're still singing. In fact, today I'm in Hope, Arkansas today. I'm in a Holiday Inn Express right now. So we're doing this on the road. Hope you don't mind, but
no, that's fine. That's fine.
Might have been a little better quality had I done it picked a day at home, but I didn't want to do nothing at home.
Well, something I think is funny is you guys are considered one of the most successful country groups of all times, most memorable. But two of the main members are from our tri-state area, which is New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and of course William Lee is from Alabama, I believe.
Right, and the Alabama Music Hall of Fame. Dwayne Allen's in the Texas Music Hall of Fame. I am in the Philadelphia Music Hall of Fame, along with Richard. Richard and I are both in the Hall of Fame in Philly. So it's pretty cool when you see all the great acts from bandstand to the teeny boppers to the doo-wop groups to the R&B acts that have come out of Philadelphia. To be in that Hall of Fame with all these guys, I mean, heck, I'm in the Hall of Fame with Freddie Boom Boom Cannon, for crying out loud.
Well deserved, though. Growing up in Philadelphia, were you from Kensington area? Was that great area?
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't walk in there to save my life, but
I'll be honest. It saddens me to know that I will never go back into that neighborhood
Yeah.
as long as I'm left, because
Yeah.
it's horrible there, man. What a lot of these cities have turned into, the crime. A block away from my house, there's 4 blocks of tents, dead people, and needles in the street.
that's a shame.
And people are overdosing on fentanyl every single day. It is so sad that my neighborhood, that I loved so very much, man, played baseball, played football, music, everything was a big deal to me in Philly. I had a great set of parents.
Yeah.
Everything was great. I loved growing up there. I wouldn't trade any of it, but I ain't going back.
No. Well, growing up there, back when you did a lot of the 1950s rock and roll stars, we just lost, unfortunately, Bobby Rydell, who was a personal friend of mine.
Wow.
Were they inspirations in your earlier days? I know you like gospel a lot, but did you follow them at all?
But in my early days, all those Philadelphia guys were my heroes. Every single one of them. Frank Avalon, Fabian, Paul Anka, just go on down the list. And and that continued to grow. And I mentioned Freddie Boom Boom Cannon, Chubby Checker, all those guys out of Philly, man, were heroes to me, every single one of them. And I even went down there and danced on Bandstand a few times when I was 14, 15.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
Not a regular. People through the years thought I was a regular on Bandstand. No. In fact, when I got to become friends with Dick Clark, obviously later in life, and he directed so many of the big award shows and everything else. But Dick Clark once did a book on the 25 years of Bandstand and had me write a chapter in there on what it was like to just go down there and try to get in. It was fun. But, I'm a Philly guy, man. I'm still a Philly guy at heart. You could never drag me out of the rolling hills of Middle Tennessee anymore. I've lived there since '73. That ain't going to happen. But I still love my Phillies, and they just won 4 straight against Colorado. I watched everything.
Well, we're glad you support them. I have a question for you, Joe, real quick. Mike, hold on. The hit-making machine that you guys became, the Oak Ridge Boys, what say did you have over the songs you picked, or the way you sang them, or any of that? Did you have any type of was a lot of management over here? Is like, no, gotta do what you guys want to do? Because it seemed like when you guys were singing, you had the most fun of any band. I mean, I've never seen a band that just loved to sing their harmonies. and do them so well.
Well, power harmony is our thing, and we had a great producer through all the real heydays. We have a great producer now in young Dave Cobb, but back then we had Ron Chansey. Ron produced all those gold and platinum albums on our wall, are all produced by Ron. He was the fifth oak, and we as a team we looked for songs. Ron was a great song man. Our Dwayne Allen is a great song man. Guys that can listen to songs and tell, well, man, that could be a hit.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And then all four guys, if everybody's into it, you got to have all four guys into it. We're never going to sing a song somebody hates. So then we do it. And it kind of falls into place who sings lead and how the harmonies go. I mean, a lot of that we do naturally, but producers help. You know, the old joke in Nashville is, what does a producer do anyway? Well, we've always had a producer that was able to have good input on what we were doing and how we were doing it, from the song to the arrangements to the harmony.
Now, all the songs you sang, what is your most favorite? I know this is going to be hard. What is your most favorite song that you really love yourself and the audience really doesn't know about it that much? I know there's always an artist favorite.
The audience does know this one because it was a big #1 hit in around 1984. But my favorite song is Never Hurts to Hurt Sometimes.
Oh, okay.
And the reason it's my favorite song is because it was my mother's favorite song. And I sang it to her, man, right before she died. She wanted to hear me sing it. I sang it to her. And when I sing that song at night, I always think of her. So that song never hurts to hurt. When it's on the set list, believe me, I love singing it.
Oh yeah, because it represents your mom and what she loved. That's such a beautiful thought. Thanks for sharing that with us, Joseph. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, something I got to bring up about his mom. From what I understand, such a super lady. Your dad had took an injury when he was in the war and had a stroke, and your mom stayed with him by his side for the rest of his life. That's something you don't see much anymore today, but I know you had written a lot about your mom and dad in one of your books. Why don't you tell us a bit more about that book and your parents, because it sounded like they were great people.
They were. My parents both passed away in 2001. My father died earlier in the year. My mother passed away right after 9/11, and we never told her about it. And because she always thought that Daddy was so safe being buried at Arlington National Cemetery, and had my mother ever known how close that plane came to bellying up right in Arlington, I don't think she could have took it. But so we never told her about that. But I wrote a book called G.I. Joe and Lily. My father was back in 2003. It's been a bestseller. It's done really, really well. I've written a lot of books, but that book really hit. And it's because a lot of people live the same lives. You know, my mother was Women's Army Corps. She met Daddy at the end of the war. Daddy was at the first wave of D-Day. On the first wave, on D-Day, Utah Beach. He got a Bronze Star for valor on the beach, which he never could figure out what he did that was valor. But he fought 52 days in, and in St. Lo, France, he took out a couple of machine gun nests all on his own because, as he would say, he was pissed off. He was not a hero. I think he was a hero. He's gone now. He was a hero. And he won a Silver Star for that one, and a couple of Purple Hearts. That's why he's buried in Arlington. And my mother was Women's Army Corps WAC, man. She was a corporal. And they met right after the war, married. And when my father was 39 years old, he had a piece of shrapnel stuck in his carotid artery, and it cut the blood flow from his brain, and he had a massive stroke. And he stayed alive and crippled and not able to talk, man, until he was 75 years old. And I'll be 75 next year, geez. But him and Mommy are buried at Arlington, and I wrote the book. I wrote a song called G.I. Joe and Lily, and to have the opportunity to honor your parents is something that very few people get.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So you know, if anybody sees the book G.I. Joe and Lily, go to Amazon, look at it. It's a great story of America and romance and the greatest generation, quite frankly.
Can you give us some excerpts from it, like the some that they can do whet people's appetite to maybe go buy it?
Oh, you mean to like an excerpt from the book right here? No,
yeah.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
But it's a great story, and I'll tell you what I did do. I wrote the story in a third person. I write about Joey is telling the story. Now, if you know that Joey's the son, it don't matter. It ain't going to kill it for you. But most people that read the book don't find out till the end that the narrator of the story is the son, and the parents, you know, were my parents. And I did it that way because it was easier to rise up above and look down on it, if you know what I mean. And be objective and write the story in a third person way, and like a fly on the wall kind of thing. And the book came out really, really well. It really did. I had written just enough stuff, I think, before that my writing skills, which I think have even improved since G.I. Joe and Lily, to be honest. But the more you write, the better it gets. It seems anyway, or you hope that's the case. I'm working on a book right now called I See Myself. And it's kind of semi-autobiographical, semi-Oak Ridge Boys. And I wrote a book 3 years ago called On the Road with the Oak Ridge Boys, which is a behind-the-scenes look at the group that CMT.com called it the best behind-the-scenes music industry book written in the last 20 years.
Very, very nice.
So
Okay, so I wanted to ask you.
Writing, I do. I'm not a great songwriter. I've written a couple of cool songs, but I've written a lot of really crappy songs. But it seems like when I get on this laptop and inspiration hits me, it seems like the words just come to me. It's definitely a blessing, and it's give God the honor and the praise for that.
Oh, beautiful. So when you guys were on the Grand Ole Opry, did you guys like say, okay, now we made it? We knew we made it. What was that like your first time to be on there?
Well, it's funny you say that because we played the Opry last night, right before we left town for Arkansas.
But that wasn't your first time. You've been there many, many times before.
Well, here's what it's like. We played the Opry for years whenever they invited us. They would say, book the Oak Ridge Boys on the Opry if they're in town. We'd love to have the Oaks. And we would always go down there and sing, and it was always fun because the Opry's the Grand Ole Opry, man. It's it's what country music is. And that night we were singing on stage, and little Jimmy Dickens came out. And you find this on YouTube, who dressed as gold and told us we were now members of the Opry. What it was really like was like you go there to sing like you visit someone's house, and one night they say, hey, bring your bags, you're staying. You live here now. And that's what it was like. And now we're part of the family and have been for over 10 years. And when you go to the Opry now, it's just different. It feels like family. And it did last night. We had a great show on the Opry last night.
I absolutely love little Jimmy Dickens. In fact, Doc can tell you, I brought him up so many times in the past. How was he like to be around? Was he just as he was on stage as he was behind the scenes? Such a nice guy, real personable.
Oh yeah, man. Jimmy Dickens was the Grand Ole Opry, man. He was energetic. He was funny. He was just everything. In fact, backstage at the Opry, not counting the pandemic, obviously, when there was nobody backstage, but to me, backstage at the Opry hasn't never been the same since Jimmy's been gone. If you see a big crowd of people years ago, they're around Jimmy Dickens. He drew a crowd. He entertained. He was funny, and I don't know. I love the guy, and he's the guy that inducted us, and it was very special to have little Jimmy do that.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite of all times. Of course, I had so many favorite country stars, and back in the day we called it country western. My parents did anyhow, but they were born on Grand Ole Opry. My mom was from the South, so it was a given. But that had to be one of the greatest things in your life, to be taken into the Grand Ole Opry. That had to be such an honor. And
to be introduced as every night, a lot of times we're introduced as members of the Gospel Music Hall of Fame, stars of the Grand Ole Opry, members of the Country Music Hall of Fame. I mean, good Lord, it gets to me every night to think of it.
Well, the announcer would be on stage for about 5 or 10 minutes extra with all the awards that the Oak Ridge Boys had won over the years. It's amazing what you guys have accomplished, and all the great songs that you put out, all quality. And the gospel music, too, was such a great issue with a lot of the Southern people, not just Southern, Northern. I'm from New Jersey, but I grew up with it. I remember you guys being on the Bill Gaither Gospel Hour.
Right.
That had to be a thrill, because I could count tons of the older country stars sitting in that little audience, and then seeing you guys perform. That had to be an awesome event. I know it was to me to watch.
We've been on several of those Bill Gaither homecoming things. In fact, there's one out right now that's just us singing hymns. And with Bill Gaither moderating and interviewing in between all the songs. And it's the old hymns of the church. It's called the Oak Ridge Boys Hymns and Gospel Favorites. And the song we recorded with Merle Haggard is on that album as well, which won a Dove Award for us and Merle Haggard. Merle had never won a Dove Award. That's a gospel music award. And,
wow.
they say he was so proud of that, and it really made us feel good. See, what happened was Merle wrote a gospel song, and he pitched it to us, and we thought the song was just incredible, and so we wanted to record it, and it never really fit anything we had been doing. So when the idea for the hymns album came up, we said, yeah, but let's call it Hymns and Gospel Favorites so we can put the Merle Haggard gospel song on it. So that's what we did.
My mom's favorite song from you guys was "Thank God for Little Kids." She used to play that all the time. That was such a great song, and "In the Garden" too. I think that may have been one of the songs that you sang on the Gaither Homecoming, if I remember correctly.
Might have been.
But what a great rendition! Hearing you guys sing it, even though it wasn't a cappella, it sounded like it because your harmonies were so in tune with each other. It's great. I love that kind of music, and of course, being a fan, it was a treat. In fact, I got to go to YouTube and refresh myself on all the songs because I still have a cassette tape of you guys from back in the day. And it's always been a favorite. But getting back to the writing part, if I remember correctly, you wrote a book about kitten Lillian or Lily?
No, Lily was Mom. The kitten was Molly.
Molly, that's it, Molly. That's right.
Well, that was some of my first writing, actually. Now, I had written a few things, for a few magazines over the years and everything else, but we had got this little kitten, and I just thought she was the sweetest thing in the world. And I love my cats. I'm a cat guy. If you follow me on Twitter at Joe Bosnall, you'll see more cat tweets than probably anything. But yeah, I love this little kitten. And I had to go to Vegas, and I had just bought a brand new laptop at the time. One of those first real good Apple MacBooks that came out back in the late 90s. And I opened up a fresh page one night, and I was thinking of my kitten, missing my kitten. And I wrote, Molly was a full-grown cat, although she still looks somewhat like a kitten. Well, I proceeded to write a series of 4 books about Molly the cat and her friends, and it just did really, really well. What it did at that time was that was before my girls had been pretty much grown up by then, and the grandkids were a ways off. So what Molly books did for me was bring me closer to kids for a while. I found myself in schools talking to 3rd and 4th graders and talking about Molly and the cats and reading the books to them. It was a good time for me. It's a good time in my life.
Yeah, my daughter, I bought her a couple of the books that you had back in the day, back when they still had bookstores and you could find that stuff. But that was one of her favorites, too.
That's great. Thank you. That's so cool.
Yeah, but you went by a different name for writing that? Did you go by...
My real name, Joseph S. Bosnall. That just sounds.
That's it.
Written by Joseph.
Yeah.
Our middle name, no matter what you do, our middle name is Ovda. All for it. It's Ovda. Yeah. Hey, aren't you one of the? There goes one of the. I think that. Or did you use one of the? It's Ovda.
I remember listening to you guys, and you turned and the music went into pop. And I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool for them. Y'all Come Back Saloon and all your other hits were there. I mean, unbelievable stuff. Were you guys surprised that you went, what happened to Kenny Rogers happened to you?
Well, we toured with Kenny in 78, 79, and 80, especially 79 on the Full House tour. It was the first arena tour in the history of country music. Kenny Rogers, Dottie West, Oak Ridge Boys. We were the hot young act winning all the awards. Kenny was riding the Gambler and Lucille. He was doing the big duets with Dottie. So that was a monster tour, big production tour, stage in the middle. Arenas sold out every single night for 90 cities. It was a monumental thing in our career. And what happened back then, to us, now just reverse from musically for a second, we've never thought much about the genre. Now with the Y'all Come Back Saloon album, which won Country Album of the Year, we really concentrated on being country. If you listen to that album, You're the One, and I'll Be True to You and stuff, it's pretty well country. But as we got into the 70s, songs like Sail Away and Heart of Mine and Dream On, they were leaning kind of pop and got a lot of adult contemporary play at that time. But nothing prepared us for Elvira. No. Even after the Kenny tour, everything was huge for us back then. So we played in arenas from end of 78 right into 80. When Elvira hit, 81, we started playing arenas in the middle of 81. 82, Bobby Sue come out, Thank God for Kids, the aforementioned Thank God for Kids. And next thing you know, we're on our own arena tour for about 4 years. We followed American Made and a bunch of stuff like that. And it was really good. Well, anyway, then Kenny calls us in 84 and says, man, we're going to do a reunion tour. You want to go? Yeah, heck yeah, Kenny, let's go. So in 84 and 85, we did a reunion tour with Kenny, Dottie, and us again, and sometimes Dolly instead of Dottie. And of course, they had Islands in the Stream then. By then, Kenny had Lady. I mean, God, it was huge. You know, Kenny was monster. And we were right there with him. So all the way, I don't think we ever saw an empty seat, man, from like 79 to 86. And then in 87, Kenny calls us and says, I'm going to do a Christmas tour. Well, we had 2 Christmas albums out by then.
Yeah.
God for Kids on it. So we went out with Kenny on a Christmas show. It was us and Kenny and some young guy named Garth. It did, man. And now we're out there with Kenny for a whole big Christmas tour. And we back up one day and said, you know what, man, we can do Christmas. We can do a Christmas tour. And for the last 32 years, we've done our own Christmas tour. And Kenny got us going on that. So Kenny Rogers, there's a lot of people who are big influences on our career. Our manager, Jim Palsy, the biggest. And of course, Johnny Cash and Jimmy Dean, a lot of people, Roy Clark. But nobody influenced us more than Kenny Rogers. That's why 2 years ago, March, right before the shutdowns, my wife came into the bedroom. I was still sleeping. It was about 8:30 in the morning. And she said, Joe, oh no, Kenny died. Never forget it. I'll never forget that moment to forever because I loved Kenny.
Yeah, that was almost like a John Lennon moment for me because I followed Kenny from the early days of the early days of the first edition.
Yeah, baby.
And unbelievable music that he created from there, then, and everything else. Even I don't know if you remember, Joe, but he used to do the guitar teaching things years and years ago. I remembered it on TV, and I'm like, wow, that was so cool. I didn't know that. But I mean, yeah, I got the John Lennon vibe when he passed away. I really did because I feel that his music touched me in so many ways with all the songs that he created and all the the different things that he did. I mean.
I love the version
as well, too.
They sang power harmony.
Yeah.
And you know what? You may not know this, but on a first edition, Kenny Rogers in the first edition recorded Elvira long before we did.
Yeah.
It's on a Kenny Rogers album, and I'll tell you, he did it real weird. It was almost like a minor. Elvira, Elvira. It was really strange, but he never released it as a single back then. It probably would have hit, because Kenny.
Yeah.
I'll have a question for you from one of our listeners. She said, I have to ask if he remembers a time when you autographed a baby's diaper.
I don't, but I don't doubt it for a minute. We've signed.
I don't remember.
Yeah, here's my diaper. Sign my baby's diaper. Sure, why not?
I mean, you probably got.
The lady asked a minute ago about how we ever got through Snoqualmie Pass up in Washington years ago. That was on a cruise.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, go ahead.
And yes, ma'am, that was a tough trip. We had 2 days to make it from there to Montana, and it was ice and snow and 40 below all the way. One of the toughest bus rides I think we've ever had in our lives. And, so, yeah, I remember Snoqualmie. I'll remember it forever.
One of my friends wanted to know if Richard's voice is still as deep as it used to be.
Yeah. I think as Richard's gotten older, it's gotten even richer and fuller. I mean, yeah, the guy's an incredible talent. I mean, nobody.
It is amazing how deep that voice is, and when he boom papa mama.
Every night he'll do it tonight in Hope, Arkansas, University of Arkansas. Hope. He'll do it tonight.
I remember seeing you guys. I think it was the Mandrell sisters had a show on. I saw it on the Country Network, and you guys were on, and I think it was maybe. Andy Williams or I can't think who the other guest was, but you all performed together with the Mandrell sisters, and I remember I forget what song it was. It may have been
I can't remember.
Bobby. It's everything runs together, but.
It does.
That had to be amazing. I couldn't imagine. I love the Mandrell sisters too.
They had a great show and did a great job. And I'll tell you, back then, network TV was, back then they had a lot of variety shows, a lot of shows you could be on. I mean, the Oakland Boys did 35 Tonight shows, and Johnny Cash was Johnny Carson was the host of every one but 3. One night it was Roy Clark guest hosting. One night John Davidson and Kenny hosted one night with us on right in the middle of that big tour. But all the other times we were there with Johnny, and shows like that really helped build our foundation back in those days. It really did.
Well, in the early days of TV, you were also on Mike Douglas years ago, and also Merv Griffin. I mean, a lot of the great, show hosts at that time had you on there. Were you ever on Hee Haw? I think you were, right?
Oh, Hee Haw, 1,000 times.
1,000 times, yeah.
We did over 30 Mike Douglas shows, 30 Merv Griffins, and close to 40 Dinah Shore shows.
Wow.
We were known in the business back then as Dinah's darlings. He had us on all the time. And Mike Douglas filmed right there in Philly. So whenever we did the Mike Douglas show in Philly, we did a few remote locations with Mike as well, but one in London, one in Miami, where we were there all week co-hosting with Mike. But whenever we were in Philly, it was great because my mother would come down to the studio, and one afternoon we were taping Mike Douglas in Philadelphia, the old WFIL studios.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed Asner was on the show, right? So Ed Asner walks in the room. My mother, God help her, she runs at Ed Asner. Near tackles him into the wall, going, Lou Grant, oh my God, it's Lou Grant. And not my mother.
Thanks for sharing that.
I'm sorry, Brasner.
Security.
That's so beautiful. I mean, like you said, she's, her son is a celebrity as well, but here's a bigger celebrity with a show that she knows. Oh my God, I love that. It's so cool.
One of my other great Mike Douglas memories, we could talk about things here for hours, but one of the great Mike Douglas memories I have was William Shatner was on. And so back in those days, everybody had those little hair dryers, those little bitty ones, we all dried our hair back then. Who does that anymore? But anyway, we all got our little hair dryers out. He was in the makeup chair getting made up, and we all walked in, us and our whole band, and pointed our hair dryers at him. It was a Star Trek moment that most people.
That's funny. Yeah.
You didn't blow his wig off, did you?
No, I don't think he had a wig back then.
Yeah, Mike Douglas, I'll tell you, he's one of the pioneers of broadcasting in Philadelphia, and probably the quintessential interview host. He's the one that put pretty much every other daytime interviewer on the map. It's just phenomenal. Merv Griffin, I think Mike Douglas was actually more popular than Merv Griffin was at that time. And I think that's what enabled, once he got out of the business, Merv Griffin skyrocketed. But I can remember watching his show being taped right in Philly. We were there on a school trip. And it was amazing. And he would always take the time and come out and talk to everybody in the audience in between. And phenomenal guy.
Well, the difference between those two, Mike was like your everyday guy. And Merv was a little Las Vegas.
Yeah, the showy.
A little more Las Vegas. But we did a lot with Merv and Mike. But I think that's the difference between those two. Other than that, they were a lot the same. Dinah Shore had a whole different vibe on her show. Mm-hmm. And she was very good at what she did as well. So they were fun days.
Never cared much for her singing, but she had a good show as far as interviewing.
Oh yes, Dinah Shore was never a great singer.
No,
got a few hits though.
Yeah, and back in the day, I'll tell you what. You look at her back when she was in her younger years. She was a very beautiful lady. I guess she's from Texas originally, and she was like a beauty queen or something back in that day, I remember, and very, very beautiful. But a nice person. A little before my time, but I do remember catching that on, because I'm an old-time TV buff. In fact,
he's got the old.
I'll pan right here. Who else in the world has a couple 1950s era RCA TK11 television studio cameras in their living room? That one was actually, we tracked down the serial number. That was actually one of the early Tonight shows on in New York City. That's where that one came from.
I'm looking at the camera so I can see it, but man, that is so cool.
Yeah, there it is. I can't zoom into it, but
I see it.
1,600 or 600 pounds worth, and then the other one is another 600. So that's 1,200 pounds in my studio here. That hopefully it'll never break through the floor.
Well, let me tell you though, man, that's one of the great things about technology for things like that and for groups like ourselves. I remember when in the arena days back in the early 80s, it took 6 guys to bring the soundboard in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How big and heavy they were, and you had to have
Yeah.
a
I was road
soundboard.
crew, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Now our front of the house sound mixer brings the soundboard in a suitcase.
I know.
Yeah.
It's that laptop I'm looking at. It's it's right there. And our monitor mixer has one even smaller with an iPad.
iPad, you can program everything. Yeah, I know. It's
I mean, now you can fit everything in a big trailer, pulling it behind the bus. Not if you're playing arenas all the time. You got to have
right.
right.
But for what we're doing at this point in our career, it all fits just fine.
So you
And
said you guys are touring again. You said you're on tour right now, right? Where you're at, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Pardon?
Tell us a little bit about that. Go ahead.
Well, it's great to be back out there. I mean, that shutdown, just shut down all of us, and it really shut down music. I mean, we were told to just go home, shut the door, no more singing, try not to die, and that was pretty much it for a long time. And we did a few things during that worked out. Every once in a while, we did something. We recorded our latest album during the pandemic, and when things started to open up again, gosh, that was just a great time because I remember sitting on my couch day after day after day after day with my cats and my wife, and I turned to my wife Mary one day and I said, "Am I retired?" And she said, "You might be." And I mean, we didn't know. The big thing about all of that was the uncertainty that came with it. There's nothing more negative in your life than uncertainty. And back then, we didn't know. Am I done? Are we finished singing? Or is there no more Oak Ridge Boys? No more anything else? I mean, we didn't know. But here we are back on the road singing to big crowds with no masks, and it just feels great. It feels like the world's back in shape. We know the world is actually probably worse off right now in some ways than ever, but that's why we need more gospel music, man. We need more Jesus.
Absolutely. I understand you're the technology guy of the group, that you run the website and you also run the archives of the band and all the sets that you've done over the past 15 years or so. Online, you can still go in and find out what sets of music you played back in 2005.
I do that list every day, and I look back and say, well, last time we were here, what did we do? And I try to make it a bit different, especially if it was more recent. But yeah, I do that, and I don't really run the website. No, that's the real professionals do that. But I do Oak Ridge Boys Twitter is what I do, at Oak Ridge Boys. And so if you follow the Oaks on Twitter, you're reading me.
Yeah. That's great to know. I thought that was amazing, though. One of your interviews I saw a while ago, you were talking about categorizing all your music sets and all the concerts you've done across the country. That's for 15 years worth. That's got to be a lot of computer space.
Yeah, I've got set lists that go back to about early 2000s, probably. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. How has it's obvious some things have been through a major change, but how has the music industry as a whole changed from when you first came in 73 to now? I know COVID has changed everything, but prior to that, how has it changed as far as music and control of the music that you guys perform and whatnot? I know it's a tough question.
No, it's really not, because I don't pay attention to the rest of the business. I've never cared how everybody did anything. I only care about how the Oak Ridge Boys do it, and treating people right, and singing songs, and singing good songs, and giving a show all you've got, giving everything in your business all you've got, and staying honest and true to your people. That's what makes an act last a lot of years, and that's what the Oak Ridge Boys do. And if you read the book On the Road with the Oak Ridge Boys, there's a chapter in there called the ORB Doctrine. Read it. Every music act in the world ought to pay attention to those kind of things, and if they want to be around a long time. Now, has the music changed? Oh, it's always changing, man. I remember, you mentioned country and country western and the Oaks in the early 70s, and we started to get more into pop. Us and Kenny, Dolly, Eddie Rabbitt, Crystal Gale, we were all singing crossover songs in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people feared, oh no, country music is dying. No, it wasn't. Today we're called classic country. Okay. Now Elvira, which was the biggest pop song of the year that year, is now classic country. So everything changes. The pendulum swings back and forth. To me, it's a good song. Give me a good song. Give me an artist that's singing the good song well. That's all I care about music. I don't care about genres. I don't care about anything. I care about the Oak Ridge Boys. How are we doing? What are we doing? What can we do to make this group better next year than it is this year? That's the whole mindset of all of us. We're like that. And there's no quit. There's no quitting anybody. When you guys going to retire? I don't know. When God says so. I think, we'll know. Joe's dead. He ain't coming to the bus. That would do it.
I hear you there. So when you did Elvira on the Fancy Free album, what did you expect, like, it to explode the way it did? I mean, because Elvira is probably what you're noted for by everybody.
Our biggest song. It was a huge monster hit. It took us from being a major country act to a household name. Yeah. And we knew it was fun. We knew when Ronnie Gant, song plugger from A Cuff Rose, brought it in and said, I got this Dallas Fraser song here, man, that a few guys have cut before, but I think you guys could nail this thing to the wall. Well, Ron Chancey, our producer, said, yeah, that's pretty cool. You want to try it? I said, yeah, well, how can we make it different than what the other cuts did? Well, Joe sing the lead. That was Ron Chancey's idea. Joe, you sing the lead because it's really fun and up, and that's you. So you take the lead, and instead of the group doing Papa Mau Mau's, let Richard do it. Well, we had fun in the studio doing that. We only ran it through about 3 times, and that was it. The studio musicians were all smiling. We had a good time.
They knew right then and there.
Yeah, the album was coming out in March, and so we were out on the road in the Pacific Northwest in February of 81. And we didn't introduce it or nothing. We just said to the people, we've got a new album coming out. I'd like to sing a few of the new songs for you. We did Elvira, and the place acted like we gave them a condo in Montserrat. They went nuts. And we backed up and said, whoa, but we sang it again. And the same thing happened. Well, for about 4 or 5 nights in a row, it happened everywhere we played. Spokane, Portland, Oregon, on and on. So we got in touch with the label and said, hey, man, something really going on out here, man. You ought to release this thing as a single if we're getting any indication at all that people are enjoying listening to this song. And they released it, and by the end of March, it was a #1 country record. It was a big, huge country hit through June of 81. Then as it came down the country charts, and we released Fancy Free as our next single, which did really well.
Right.
It crossed, but Elvira crosses into pop in July, August, and September. The whole country was singing Papa Mau Mau with the Oak Ridge Boys. So I mean, it was a big thing for us. It was gigantic, a great thing to live through. And you say, could you figure it out? No. If you knew that was going to happen, you'd know it with every song.
Yeah. Right.
We had no idea until we sang it that night in Spokane that this thing could be big.
Every wedding I went to in the 80s, I got to say, every wedding I went to in the 80s played that song, whether it was Italian, Irish, Jewish, didn't matter. Every wedding played that song because the people knew that song and they all loved it and sang it and enjoyed it. And oh my God, what a feeling.
Every age, the kids loved it. Kids still love it. Kids loved it. Back then, I'd be riding down the street in our hometown of Hendersonville, Tennessee, and a van full of young people would just drive by and they're all singing it. A whole van full of church kids are just singing Papa Mau Mau at the top of their lungs, and I hear it and go, wow, that's incredible. And weddings, ball games, I mean, halftime, seventh inning of every ball game, major leagues. I mean, it just was the song. This is crazy.
Yeah, it helped bring country music to the forefront, and it opened up the door for every other country artist to. Well, Kenny Rogers did too, I got to say, but that single song from the Oak Ridge Boys opened up so many doors and avenues for country. Before that, you didn't see a whole lot of crossover, but after that hit, that opened up the door. Urban Cowboy and all that other great music that came from that era. It's just phenomenal how big that song still is today. You still hear it pretty much every day of the week. I know I listen to Sirius, and That's one of the songs that I hear often. It's on their playlist. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
hope you still makes good money off of that still today from from that one song. But
Well, you know, Dallas Fraser, you know, the writer and the publisher really make all the money. We make it when
Right.
we sell. But Dallas just passed away a couple of months ago, and we were all at Dallas's funeral. And one of the greatest writers of all time, right? And his sister told me that Dallas Fraser had a lot of great Christmases because of Elvira.
That's funny though, Joseph, because a friend of mine, Jack Temchin, who has written a lot of the early Eagles songs, he also said the same thing. His music, you know, because the songs he has written over the years, people really don't know he's a songwriter because they just hear the Eagles sing it and the different, you know, music. But the songwriter, I mean, just when you have a song that just hits like that, I mean, you absolutely love everything that happens to the band that created it, that helped create it, and make that happen. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
I also want to reach out to you, and I know we don't want to hold you up too much longer, but for Jimmy Deal, if you have if we have a favor we wanted to ask you, if you can do it. If you don't, that's fine too. But Jimmy Deal can't be here today because of the situation. But for his listeners and for our listeners, if you can just do a sweeper for the radio station, and Jimmy, just say basically, you know, who you are, where you're from, and you're listening to the Jimmy Deal Show on Hamilton Radio, because we always play the Oak Ridge Boys, and we always play that song and your music all the time.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
All right now. Hi, I'm Joe Bosnall with the Oak Ridge Boys, and I just want to say you're listening to my good friend Jimmy Deal here on Hamilton Radio.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Joe, it's been a pleasure.
yeah,
No, that's perfect. Joe, see, you're professional, you know. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Mike, do you have anything else to add? And then
yeah. Before you get out of here, I want to know if you guys are putting out a new CD or anything coming out that we can look forward to and possibly pick up either on Apple Music. Not that I'm a fan of Apple Music, but there or Amazon or any place else, because you got me excited again about the Oak Ridge Boys.
Well, for the gospel fans out there, the new Bill Gaither DVD of the Hymns Performance album DVD thing is really cool. You can find that anywhere. And our latest album is called Front Porch Singing, which came out last summer, and produced by young Dave Cobb in Nashville. It's a pretty cool collection. A whole attitude. The attitude of this album, Front Porch Singing, is 4 Oak Ridge boys sitting on the front porch singing old gospel songs, new gospel songs, old country songs, a few new country songs as well. It's a really cool album, and it's doing really good. So chalk one up for the old guys. Front Porch Singing.
Front Porch Swinging.
Check it out.
I'm definitely going to get a copy of that. That's I love that kind of music, and I love you guys. It's been such an honor to be able to interview you, of all people, the lead singer that I remember from my teens as Elvira. It's amazing. I've been in the business for years, but this has truly been a gift to be able to interview you and get to meet you. And again, many thanks for HamiltonRadio.net and Smoke and Bacon Radio. And of course, we're live streaming on YouTube. I want to personally thank you for coming and joining us. And it's been a real thrill. And anytime you want to come back, just let us know. We'd love to have you back on, and anything future you have going on, we'd love to hear about it.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Doc. Appreciate the hospitality, and this has really been fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Joe.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Like I said, best of luck going forward, and anything you need, just reach out to us. You all come back anytime.
Thank you. God bless you.
Take care. God bless, Joe.
Bye-bye, Joseph.